One of the crucial elements that made the Battle of the Bulge so significant was the leadership on both sides. For the Germans, Adolf Hitler's obsessive drive to achieve victory in the West had led to the plan for the offensive, and his involvement in military decisions had become increasingly erratic. As the leader of Nazi Germany, Hitler made strategic decisions that often overestimated the capabilities of his dwindling forces. His belief that the Allies were on the verge of collapse due to their overstretched lines, and the harsh winter led him to order this massive offensive, despite the overwhelming challenges. In contrast, the leadership on the Allied side was a blend of diverse nationalities, experiences, and personalities. The American forces, primarily under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, had been making rapid progress across France and Belgium since the D-Day landings earlier that year. Eisenhower, a seasoned leader known for his ability to coordinate large-scale multinational forces, had the task of not only managing the logistics of an enormous military campaign, but also coordinating between the British, American, Canadian, and other Allied forces. His decision to establish defensive lines in the Ardennes was based on the belief that the region was unsuitable for a major offensive. The commanders on the ground were equally crucial to the outcome of the battle. American General Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, was responsible for the defense of the region, while General Patton, whose Third Army was based further south, would play a pivotal role in the later stages of the battle. Patton, known for his aggressive tactics and leadership, would eventually be called upon to lead a counteroffensive that helped break the German encirclement around Bastogne. His arrival with reinforcements would prove a game-changer, enabling the Americans to stabilize their position and push the Germans back. On the German side, the key leaders included Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, who was tasked with overseeing the offensive, and General Sepp Dietrich, the commander of the 6th Panzer Army. While the Germans had a number of highly skilled commanders, they were fighting with depleted forces, facing logistical nightmares, and grappling with the harsh winter conditions. The German army was also suffering from low morale, and many of the troops involved in the attack were either fresh recruits or veterans of previous battles, further complicating their ability to execute the complex maneuvers required for the success of the offensive. The attack was launched in complete secrecy under the cover of darkness, with German forces making their way through the dense forest of the Ardennes, an area that the Allies considered too difficult for large-scale military operations. This initial surprise gave the Germans a significant advantage, and they were able to break through the American lines at several points surrounding isolated pockets of Allied soldiers. German tanks, spearheaded by the feared Panther and Tiger divisions, tore through the American defenses, creating chaos and confusion among the defending units. However, the weather would prove to be both a blessing and a curse for the Germans. While the fog and snowstorms initially hindered the effectiveness of Allied air support, they also hampered German supply lines. Their ability to resupply troops and move forward was severely limited, and as the weather began to improve, the Allies launched devastating airstrikes against German positions. By the third day of the battle, the situation began to shift in favor of the Allies. General Eisenhower and his commanders had been quick to realize the scale of the German offensive and were working tirelessly to mobilize reinforcements. Despite the initial shock, the American forces in the region began to reorganize and hold defensive positions. The German attempt to seize Bastogne, the strategic crossroads town, became a focal point of the battle. The 101st Airborne Division, under the command of Brigadier General McAuliffe, was surrounded by German forces but refused to surrender. When the Germans sent a message demanding the surrender of the American forces in the town, McAuliffe's famous response, "Nuts," became one of the most iconic moments in the battle. The siege of Bastogne lasted several days, with the American defenders enduring constant shelling, sub-zero temperatures, and limited supplies. Yet despite the desperate situation, the 101st held their ground, buying valuable time for reinforcements to arrive. Meanwhile, General Patton's Third Army, which had been stationed further south, was making rapid advances to relieve Bastogne. Patton, who had long advocated for aggressive tactics, pushed his forces through the snow-covered roads, and by December 26th, they broke through the German encirclement, lifting the siege and turning the tide of the battle. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new daily videos. The success of the relief of Bastogne was a significant turning point. The German offensive began to lose momentum as the Allies began their counterattack. The Germans, who had hoped to split the American forces and capture Antwerp, found themselves struggling to maintain their lines. Their advanced units, which had initially been successful in breaking through the Allied defenses, were now being bogged down by stiff resistance, poor weather, and stretched supply lines. The Allies, bolstered by reinforcements, were able to launch counteroffensives on both the northern and southern flanks, pushing the Germans back and steadily reducing the bulge in the front lines. The Germans had launched their final major offensive in the west with the hope of changing the course of the war, but instead they found themselves unable to maintain the momentum of their attack. By January 1945, the battle was effectively over. The Germans had suffered tremendous casualties, with an estimated 100,000 men killed, wounded, or captured. In addition to the human toll, they had lost a significant portion of their remaining armor and artillery, which they could ill afford. The Allies, though also suffering significant losses, had successfully defended their lines and repelled the German offensive. The Battle of the Bulge was one of the bloodiest engagements of World War II, but it also marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. After the battle, the Allies were able to quickly resume their offensive and continue their advance into Germany. The Germans, exhausted and depleted, were unable to mount any further large-scale offensives. The Allies took advantage of this, launching a series of successful attacks that would eventually culminate in the capture of Berlin in May 1945. The Battle of the Bulge had, in many ways, been the last major chance for Nazi Germany to regain the initiative in the war, and it ended in failure. But beyond the military significance, the Battle of the Bulge also had profound psychological effects. For the Americans, it was a test of their resolve. The surprise and initial success of the German offensive had rattled the Allied forces, but they ultimately proved their ability to withstand pressure and fight back. The heroic defense of Bastogne, in particular, became a symbol of American determination and the ability to overcome adversity. For the Germans, the failure of the offensive marked the end of their hope for a successful resolution in the West. The battle exposed the fragility of the Nazi war effort and the inability of their forces to mount another major offensive on the scale of those seen earlier in the war. Looking back on the Battle of the Bulge, it's clear that it was not just a clash of armies, but a clash of wills. On both sides, soldiers endured unimaginable hardships, battling not only the enemy, but also the brutal winter conditions. The cold, snow, and fog made every movement more difficult, and the psychological toll of the battle was immense. Yet in the end, the Allies prevailed. The battle solidified the resolve of the American forces and provided the momentum needed to finish the war in Europe. For the Germans, it marked the end of any serious hope of victory, and from that point on, the outcome of the war was inevitable. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered today not only for its military significance, but also for the extraordinary bravery displayed by the soldiers who fought there. The battle, one of the largest and most costly of World War II, serves as a reminder of the sacrifices made during the war and the ultimate triumph of the Allied forces over Nazi Germany. If you found this video insightful, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth historical explorations. We have many more stories to tell, each of them filled with lessons from the past. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.